how did you take those first steps of you can't do it alone? Because I mean, it is scary.
Yeah. I mean, I did it absolutely and only when I had to, because my back was just against the wall. And I had to try to do something to stop drinking because everyone in my life, well, not everyone, but, my immediate family, my co-parent, my daughter's father, we were separated at the time, but like they were watching. And if I didn't start to get my shit together, I was going to lose my daughter and who knows what else.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the losing potential of losing her that I couldn't cope with that. So I was forced into it. And what I did was I didn't go like to my first 12-step meeting seeking help. I really didn't. I was like, I'm going to check this box. I'm going to learn how to get sober on my own type of thing. I wasn't actually looking for help. So it kind of happened on accident. And what I found, what a lot of people find is you go into these spaces and you hear people say these things that you have thought and felt that you never imagined could be said out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to, the shame starts to crumble a little bit, and you start to crave that truth because it's cathartic, and you start to feel a connection to these people and their experience, whether you like it or not. And whether you fight it or not, which I did. And so it was very slow and very reluctant. And then I started to want it. Eventually I wanted to know people who were going through what I was going through. I wanted to start to try to tell the truth. I was started to be okay saying like, I'm a little scared to go to this work event. I'm scared to go on this trip to New York for work because I have always drank in the past and I don't know how to do this. Or like, how do I get through this weekend? This fucking sucks.
Yeah.
How do I do this? So it was like that. It was very slow, very tentative. I still don't like it. I still don't like admitting that I need help. I still don't like asking for help. I still don't like counting myself into a group. It's still hard for me.
Do you feel like are you an introvert?
Yeah, I am, but that's not it.
That's not what it was.
No, it's not. It's just this deep-seated desire to be self-sufficient and smart enough.
Yeah.
And capable enough to do it on my own.
I think part of that too is like, the society we were raised in, whatever you got positive affirmations for as a child. Like for me, it was you're competent, you're responsible, you can deal with things. To some extent, my husband was like, some version of you don't have mental health issues, based on previous relationships, like, oh, you're so positive and, just deal with life. And so when I found myself struggling with my mental health because I was drinking, or maybe I was drinking because I was struggling with my mental health, I was like, I can't say anything about it or admit it, because then that's one of the things that people love about me,
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I do know. Yeah, it's a lot of that too, for sure.
One of the things I love about your 9 things that you lay out really clearly in Push Off From Here is the 9 things sort of go through a lot of the resistance that people have to giving up alcohol or to admitting this is your thing. In terms of it's not your fault, kind of what you start with, you go into the idea that, addiction can be seen as, you called it ritualized compulsive comfort seeking, which is a normal response to adversity. And I thought that was really helpful. And I hadn't really thought about it that way before, that of course you have gone down this road and you need to have self-compassion and healing, it's not your fault.
Yeah. It's hard for, I mean, I think that I know those weren't my exact words. I know that's a quote. The ritualized compulsive comfort seeking. Just to be
Yeah,
clear,
no, I'll
those
have to
weren't my
look
words.
up who
I
said
just don't
that and
want,
put it in.
yeah. But I loved how that was phrased because it's comfort seeking that, you know, we're always just trying to get our needs met. We're trying to get out of the pain that we're in or avoid it. We're trying to make connections. We're trying to not, you know, to do what we need to do to get what we need and want. And it's the most human thing in the world to do that. And alcohol's everywhere and it's accessible and it's largely seen as no big deal, and celebrated and all of that. And so of course, yeah, there are, second to you can't do it alone, it's not your fault was the hardest for me to allow myself to believe, because it sounded so victim-y. You know, and I felt so terrible and shitty about what I had done to people, which those things were real.
Yeah.
You know, I had behaved in ways that were devastating to me, to the people around me. I lied, I cheated, I, you know, put people in, I was flaky. I put people in including my daughter, in danger. You know, I made people wonder about me all the time. I worried a lot of people and I felt terrible about those things. And so, you know, we largely think that the way that we're going to change is to punish ourselves. And we can't allow ourselves to believe that I had been raised in this very, you know, personal responsibility is the ultimate thing forever. And anything that sounds like victim speak is going to, like, it's just not allowed. And so I had to work through a lot to allow that. I think the culture has softened a bit there, at least in sobriety circles. We've started to talk about it a lot differently in the past 10 years. And I think that, I mean, maybe it's just because I'm on the inside of it, not the outside.
Yeah.
But I do believe it's starting to change. But I think I think when people, or I thought when if I said to myself, this is not my fault, that it was very victim-y, but also that it wouldn't allow me to actually change. Like that wasn't going to get me there. I had to just like suck it up and fix it.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that's interesting that you said that you think that's starting to change in recovery circles, but I think also in society at large. I mean, to some extent, you talked about in the book how finally the conversation is shifting, especially around women and alcohol, from like a them problem to a we problem, meaning the prevalence of alcohol in society is sort of a public health issue. And the idea that we need to put warning labels on, you know, alcoholic beverages the way we do with smoking. One thing I thought was interesting, you actually start the introduction of Push Off From Here by, you know, giving a brief cultural history of addiction recovery and the impact of Alcoholics Anonymous, which I know is where you started. But when you were talking about the idea of it's not your fault and how we're sort of coming to accept that more in recovery circles, I attended AA for a while, and you talk about in the book that there is a certain aspect where in AA, it is seen as your fault, meaning it's a disease and you're powerless against it. But there's also a lot of within the 12 steps of moral inventory and you know, you versus them. Why did you start off that way?
Yeah, well, just to make comment on that, I think what it's not, I don't have any issue with the 12 steps. I actually think they're beautiful, but what's missing in that story is just the context that we have now about trauma, about all the things that impact why someone might drink problematically or fall into any addiction of any kind. That wasn't known information then. And so there's a huge part of that story that is just missing.
Yeah.
From within a culture. And it's not even their fault. It's just that information wasn't available at the time. And what we know now is that there's a significant correlation to adverse childhood experiences or ACEs and trauma in whether or not someone will become addicted to substances. And that's a huge part of it's not your fault. It can't be overstated. And the other part that's missing, the other piece of context is the cultural part. There's we can't say enough about how I spend a lot of time talking about the culture of alcohol, because you just can't overstate what the messaging does to someone who becomes addicted when this is the most normalized, everywhere, accessible, in all places, and not just accessible, but like stamp of approval.
Yeah.
Like, you absolutely should be doing this if you're doing it right.